I'm a feminist.
Boo! 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 Boo!
That may make a lot of people upset. And you know what? I think they have a right to be. Third wave feminism is a failure. More than that, it is actually directly leading to some very bad things in our country, and not just limited to the US, to any democratic Western society. Feminism, third wave feminism, is contributing to a very poisonous culture, one in which we tolerate intolerance for the sake of political correctness. It's not exactly all of third wave feminism, not all. It is intersectional feminism that has failed this country and that is going to continue to bring down any established democracy. Now, offhand, that is a very conspiratorial statement to be making, but I will explain why, and it will make a lot of sense, and you're free to disagree, of course. And I hope, though, that you can be open-minded. Any feminists listening to this, please, please be open-minded and realize that there is a different way to be a feminist, and there's a different way to advocate and fight for women, and there's a way to do it with a lot of honor, integrity, and a lot of respect for yourself. I guess I should start out by talking about my journey with feminism. My journey, my story. I know many of you are very sick of these sorts of videos, but I'm going to do it anyway because I think it's a little bit different, or at least one that's not as publicly expressed. My journey with feminism, well, hold on one second. It really began with, and you know which book I'm going to pull up, people have been watching my videos, this book. This book really changed my life. This book is about a Saudi Arabian princess. It's about her life story, living in Saudi Arabia, which is a country that's very oppressive towards women. If you think about feminism, what is the definition of feminism? Feminism is about making women equal to men in society, whether that be politically, economically, or socially. Now, we have seen women be raised politically when we gained the right to vote. And we have seen us economically gain many benefits, and this was during second wave feminism. Now where we are currently at is third wave feminism, at least within the United States. The reason why this is a more complex movement, and a movement that where there's definitely more room for disagreement, is because who we are socially, how can a government control that, and what right does the government have to control that? There are, of course, differences between men and women. This cannot be denied. Anyone who believes in science absolutely cannot deny this. Men are typically stronger than women, and of course not all. There are exceptions. There are exceptions to every rule, but that does not mean that the exception is the rule. There are also differences in the brains in terms of how we process different emotions. Now you can make the argument, oh, is that the way we're raised, or is that the way we're born? It's possible that it's a combination of both. Getting back to sort of my journey through feminism. It started out really wanting to help women in the Middle East, because listening to these, as a little girl, I thought, and then once I reached middle school, I joined Global Care Unlimited, and I hope it's not limited because I think we should take care of this world. We learned about a lot of societies, underdeveloped nations, where women always seem to get a really short end of the stick. Not to say men don't as well, but there are very specific gendered issues, and these gendered issues usually do put women at a disadvantage. Now, there are things that men can't control and things that women can't control, such as the very ways our bodies operate, our biological systems. Women in those societies, they don't have access to sanitary napkins, tampons, pads for their period, and this can actually limit their ability to go to school, to get an education. This can put them even further behind in society, behind men. Now, that's not, that if you have limited resources as a nation, that is not men's fault. However, there are other social things where women are expected to, young girls are expected to take care of the household, do more chores, and where there's just this attitude that men are the ones who are supposed to be going out there, getting the education, getting the job, and that's the way it's set up. Putting what do you call it? Putting the hunter-gatherer sort of thing aside, you know, how our various societies as human beings started, you know, where it was a good thing, in a sense, to break up the jobs by gender because of the different ways in which we function. Back then, you could easily make the argument that that really made sense. I think today, in a modern world, it doesn't make as much sense, but obviously those trends are still there as a result of the fact that it did make sense in the beginning. I guess part of being an advanced species is that we want to do things to sort of correct that, because we really do want things to be equal. Not equal in that everyone has to have the same exact amount of money, there has to be the same number of women in this job and this type of job and men in that one. That's not exactly what we should be looking for. What we should be looking for is equal opportunity. Let's talk about the failure of not necessarily all of third wave feminism. Now, I'd say there are certain aspects of third wave feminism that I am on board with, I agree with. Many of the tactics used to actually sort of talk about some of the issues have been manipulative, and I think they've been actually counterproductive and have actually created a backlash. We don't want to see many of the social gains that women have made overturned because we push too far. If we actually want to see the betterment of women in society, we have to first of all acknowledge, are we really at a disadvantage in certain areas? And is this actually pushing for this? Is this actually going to better us? Or will the actual pushing for this set us back? We have to be pragmatic. So I had a curiosity, a very, very strong curiosity towards all things in the Middle East, Middle Eastern women. It was so bizarre, so different from what's acceptable in our society. Even when things were sexist, when women, really sexist, I mean, when women couldn't vote, women weren't allowed to own property, women didn't have an easy time getting divorces, inheritance, all those sorts of things that we would expect from an older, less socially developed society. But even looking back at that, it was never as bad as what the women in the Middle East went through, because you actually look at the laws in place. Yes, women were objectified. Yes, women were not given autonomy. But it was almost done in a very benevolent way. And I want to be careful about how I use the word benevolent, because obviously it wasn't right and it wasn't fair to women. I would like to call it a benevolent form of sexism. It's chivalrous. It was, we must take care of women because women are like children that we have to treat like delicate flowers. They can't have the responsibility, they can't handle it, so we'll take all the responsibility, but that also means that we get to make all the decisions. That's unfair, that's its own form of sexism. Yet, if you look at Middle Eastern societies, it's worse than that for women, because it was less about wanting to take care of women, and it was more so, we must control women, because if we do not put them on a leash, they threaten us. They are a threat to society, and that's why we have to control them. It wasn't this, oh, women, they're so silly. Oh, their poor little brains, they can't handle it. It's more, women, you know, they're always trying to aggravate us. They're always trying to provoke us. We have to put a mask on them to maintain, to keep in check their sexuality, their uncontrollable sexuality. Another thing that I will add to that, women were meant to be seen in our societies. Women were meant to be beautiful flowers that men got to parade around like trophies. That's a sexism all of its own. But in these Middle Eastern societies, women are dangerous and must be kept hidden. They're two different things. They're similar because they do put women at a lower position in society. However, it's a very different manifestation of the lowering of women. I wanted to help these women, and I thought of crazy different ways to do it, ways that would never work. My main focus was on Saudi Arabia, because hearing women can't drive, the idea that a woman could be stopped in the street because maybe she's showing a little too much skin, maybe she's not wearing her gloves, an imam might come, stop her, beat her, arrest her because she's not dressed properly. Hearing about these oppressive societies, and I could get more into detail about some of the really messed up things that go on there. But I want to help these people. I got a computer in middle school. I started doing a lot of research about Saudi Arabia, and so I was fully aware of all the really horrible stuff that was going on there. I came across a video of a Saudi Arabian woman saying how Saudi Arabia is the best place for women to practice Islam. And started making all of these excuses for all the horrible things, completely ignoring what I had been learning about Saudi Arabia. And here's a Muslim woman from Saudi Arabia telling me that I'm wrong in my perception of how I think of how these women are treated there. And that was disheartening to see. It made me angry, but it did effectively silence me because my focus became less about Saudi Arabia. It made me angry. I still cared. It did influence where I went to next with my feminism. And as soon as I was rejected from talking about that issue, there were these new channels, new ways in which I could manifest my desire to raise the position of women in society. This is really where a lot of third wave feminism comes in. There were all these things, talking about body shaming, talking about how there are dress codes, talking about video games, talking about equal representation, the wage gap, and basically also talking about attitudes towards women that I've experienced firsthand. Social attitudes that now I think I realize you can't really exactly change them by protest movements. What did I want? What did I really want from the feminist movement? I wanted, and I still want, respect. I want to be able to do something that's worth respecting, and I don't want people to only focus on my looks, and I want to just do something that's valuable in life. Because of the way that young boys act, and because of the ways how I would see that our society would only focus on women's looks, I thought that the only way to really do that, to achieve a certain level of respect that I wanted, and to not only be judged by my looks, to not be a housewife, was to work within the feminist movement. That's why I was drawn to it. I'm not saying that all of the points that the current modern day feminist movement makes is wrong. And I'm not saying philosophically I disagree. Like, for example, I'll give you a really, really thing you might get annoyed at me for saying. When they talk about the idea that women and men, how men are viewed as the default in society and women are viewed as the deviant from the default. You can see so many different examples of this. Men are basically used to represent the human species. Now, just the other day on the Rubin Report, which is something feminists, if you're new to this, I highly encourage you to watch. It's very enlightening. Just the other day, they had a woman on with another man. I forget their name. One of the little, it's like such a minor thing. Why is anyone making a fuss about this? Is that people get offended by the term mankind. I will say, when I was younger, I was not offended so much, but it was like, yeah, why? Why is that way? I will say, philosophically speaking, when you have man, and then man is used as the root for a lot of other words, you have human, you have woman, mankind. It is a clear indication that language within itself is developed with the idea in mind that men are the default in society. I know that that's a petty issue. I'm not going to claim anyone's sexist for saying mankind, and in fact, I like the way it sounds better. I genuinely, when it says mankind's last hope, I think it sounds really good to my ear. So I'm not discouraging the use of that. It sort of does fit into this idea that women were a part of man, and this can go back to the Bible. God created Adam before he created Eve, and Eve was taken from a part of Adam. They've done studies where in a chat room, if half of the people were women or had female icons, it was seen as, wow, there's a lot of women in this chat room. Whereas, for men, it's like, wait, but it's half. Why is it a lot when there's women, when half is women? Why is that a lot of women?